Meeting. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. And today we are going to talk with some grad student alumni from Chico State. They're all in different programs. We're going to have them talk a little bit about their program and their path and what they're doing now. And then they're going to talk a little bit about their experience and some advice. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. Does everyone now see the graduate alumni? Because now I am not seeing you all. So can you just tell me if you can see what the grad student alumni panel?
Yep, it's on.
Yes.
Okay. And so yeah, so I'm looking forward to having Adrian edit out my chatting here because for whatever reason I am not seeing you all anymore. So I'm gonna just move to the next screen and I would like the panel to go around and each of you please tell us a bit about yourself and your graduate degree and what path you're currently pursuing. So, who would like to start?
I can go.
Thank you.
I am doing my degree in nutrition and food science. So I have finished all of my classes, my academic classes, so I'm just finishing up my research project. Um, so the path that I am currently pursuing is a master's in nutrition with the option for an RD. And an RD, for those who don't know, is a registered dietitian. Degree. So basically, after I'm done with my master's, I have the option, or if I want to, pursue an internship and do anywhere from like 9 months to a year long internship. And then once that's done, I can apply for my license to become a registered dietitian. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who's ready to go next?
I can go next.
Thanks.
So I studied business administration. That was my master's degree, and my undergraduate degree was actually in sociology and social sciences. So two different disciplines. And I finished in May of 2022, so about 2.5 years ago. And I have been working with McGraw-Hill. I just actually had my 2-year anniversary last week with McGraw-Hill. So I'm in customer success, which is very similar to sales. So it's about like retention and expansion opportunities. So I pursued like a corporate route. It's interesting. It's still in higher education, which is great because ultimately my passion is in higher ed.
Thanks, Anthony. Who's next?
I can go next.
Thanks.
My name is Juan Vega Ramirez. I got a bachelor's degree in history and Latin American studies from Chico State back in 2017. And then right after that, I started the master's program at Chico State as well. It took me a little bit longer than normal. COVID hit like halfway through, so I finished that up in 2021. After that, I worked at the International Admissions Office at Chico State for almost 2 years. And I am now currently in a in the PhD program for history at UC Davis.
Great. Thanks, Juan. And how about you, Fernando?
Um, Hello, everyone. My name is Fernando Infante. A little bit about myself. I actually started my college journey at community college, eventually transferring to Chico State, and later on getting my master's in public administration. Currently, I'm working in research administration, specifically working with faculty members and project directors to submit applications to federal, state, and nonprofit organizations that are seeking grants and grant opportunities. Um, yeah, it's really rewarding. It's a great job, and it just gives you the opportunity to really immerse yourself in public administration, higher education, and a little bit of the corporate world.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So welcome all of you. Thank you for being here. So we're going to move on to another question, and we'd like to know what surprised you most about your grad experience. So if somebody, has something right on the top of their head, please just unmute yourself and let us know.
I'll start with something a little bit positive. One thing that surprised me a lot was just how approachable professors are, both at Chico State and here at UC Davis. People just seem to be really open to helping you like along the way, but also helping you collaborate with your own research. And that's something that I didn't appreciate as much as an undergrad. Um, Professors, they always just seem like, they're some other, like they're rock stars, right? And so you kind of don't want to approach them, but they're people just like us. And so I've learned that, they're happy to help. And a lot of times um, they're thrilled that you're interested in what they're interested in. And so for those reasons, you can, start networking without really thinking of it as networking, just two people talking to each other.
Thanks, Juan. And so nice that it would be something that is positive. That's, it's kind of a relief to hear when you're considering maybe approaching grad school. Anybody else have something surprising?
I think mine was similar to Juan's, just in that I feel like there's more your professors see you more as an equal, so they like work with you a little bit more. I feel like even as an undergrad, there's still like that. You feel a little bit more intimidated. And then once you get to grad school, they're just like on first name basis, which is a little weird. But they're really friendly. And I know that I had all of my professors' phone number in case I needed to reach out personally for whatever reason. So that's something that you don't get, I feel like, as an undergrad. Just that, like, having that connection with them.
Thanks, Lucia.
I can share a little bit. I think it definitely was a little more demanding in the level of work and just discipline and just being immersed. I think that in undergraduate, I mean, I made the mistake of just sometimes kind of showing up, but I think as you transition to grad school, you're part of a group that is really there to learn and to be engaged. You're reading up to like, you know, 200 to 300 pages, a week. So you're really there to engage in the knowledge creation process, and you're engaging in these conversations, and you're discussing the topic and deconstructing all these concepts. And I think it's really rewarding, but it does also demand a level of engagement. And I think that was a little bit different than undergraduate.
Yeah, thanks, Fernando. Good to be thinking about ahead of time to sort of help yourself make that transition. Thanks. How about you, Anthony?
Thank you. I would add on that for my program in specific, the cohort size was actually a lot larger than I thought. Well, it's not, we don't have traditional cohorts, but just like the amount of students enrolled was quite a bit more than I expected, which I found to appreciate. I really connected with my classmates and with the instructors, as well as the amount of course offerings. For my program, there was a little bit more flexibility. We had some elective units that we got to choose from. And so that was a great opportunity, as well as the support, not just from the Office of Graduate Studies and Adelante and other great campus resources, but like department specific. We had dedicated advisors and support from the faculty.
Oh, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Anthony. And you remind me that I did not mention that you four all participated in a grant-funded program that was called Adelante, and it was sup- specific to Chico State. Chico State's Dean of Graduate Studies had written a grant application and gotten some funding to put together a program that was designed to help low-income and Latinx students to prepare and successfully complete graduate school. And other colleges have similar types of programs. It just depends on how they put theirs together and what they have submitted grant applications for. And then some colleges have built-in programs that is just college specific. So there are sort of supports out there that you can take advantage of no matter where you're going. But in Chico State, often they are run through the Office of Graduate Studies, and we're happy to talk to students about those if they're interested in coming here. But thanks so much for reminding us of that, Anthony. So I'm going to go on to the next question. So what were the biggest challenges in grad school and how did you overcome them?
I can go first.
Okay.
I think for me, the biggest challenge was imposter syndrome. Just kind of navigating that. I know financial aspect of a grad school can also be a challenge, but I had mentally prepared for that before going to grad school, so there wasn't a big of a shock for me, or so that I wasn't as surprised with or a challenge. Definitely imposter syndrome. And so one of the ways that I wouldn't say overcame it, but I was able to work with it instead of against imposter syndrome was to focus on what was happening that week. So some weeks were more hectic than others, and so I would just do it day by day. Some weeks were not as hectic, so I was able to look at the week overall and kind of plan out. Pretty quickly, after starting my program, I was like, you cannot look too far in the future because it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And so once you get overwhelmed, it's really easy to spiral. And then how do you come back from that? And so that's how I have been able to work with it. And it's not as severe as it was at the beginning, but there's still, imposter syndrome comes and goes, but that's what worked for me.
Thanks, Lucia. Important. And yeah, it's not necessarily gone, but you figured out how to deal with it. And that is such a common feeling from folks in graduate school. But it can continue even in your work, and there are definitely things that you can do, gathering your support and reminding yourself that you were selected for this for a reason, you know, and other people can sometimes help you to remember that. Juan, were you gonna add some things here?
Yeah, on the note of imposter syndrome, I too suffered and continue to suffer from that. And yeah, very much like what what Jesse, or sorry, who said that?
Lucia? Or
Lucia. Very much like Lucia said, you kind of have to just focus on what's in front of you and just work through it that way. Another thing that I would highly recommend too is just reaching out for mental health reasons. It took me a very, very long time to do so. And once I finally did, I was kind of kicking myself, like, why hadn't I done this sooner, Because that helps so much. Like those professionals are there for a reason. And so I highly recommend that. Um, Separately, though, one of the other challenges that I wasn't prepared for is how lonely the work can be, especially in my field. You're reading a lot, you're writing a lot, and all of that, takes brain power and focus time, right? And focus time that you have to do basically alone. Um, and so to sort of overcome that or to be able to manage it, you really have to make sure that you have a strong community, friends, family, the cohort, people that you can depend on, um, to be able to just reach out and say like, hey, can we grab a coffee? Can we go out for lunch? Just to have some type of distraction like that and to reconnect with people as well. Because you are sort of just alone working on your own stuff for, pretty much most of the week. So having someone to talk to and also just setting up time to hang out with people and like not really do work is very important.
Oh yeah, scheduling that time for sort of refueling on community. That's great. Thanks, Juan. Anthony or Fernando, anything you want to talk about as far as challenges and how you overcame them?
I think I can speak a little bit and just kind of want to echo what Juan discusses. Something about being immersed in the grad programs and you do all this reading and all this work, and sometimes it can be challenging to focus on growing community and creating and being disciplined with your time. I think when I first started the program, I was working full time as a full time employee, and then I was working then being a full time student, and it can be very challenging to find time to work, find time to build community, and then find time to study, and then go to class. So I think you really have to be thoughtful about what works for you. I think you need to be honest with yourself about what works for you. How can you manage your time? And like Juan said, how do you find the people that are going to be with you along the program? I know that when I was in the program, a lot of people that were in those classes became my friends, became my mentors. We shared a lot. We shared a lot of information. We shared pretty much everything for those 2 years that I went through the program. So I think definitely find your people. I think will make a big difference in being able to get through it.
And you're saying pretty much you were able to find your people in your
There,
grad program.
Well, yes, and when I found the grad, that especially when I found Adelante, I remember Carlos Gomez, another, alumni of the grad program. He invited me to be part of Adelante, and that's when I transitioned to just working for Adelante and just focusing on, being a student and being able to receive some of these services, some of these programs became a really big support network for me to get through grad school. So, aside from building community and making time, I think definitely look for resources. Sometimes there's so many things going on that can really make life easier when you're going through the program, or at least facilitate that process. So it becomes really important to to build that community and to look for those people that are going to guide you in the right way.
Thanks, Fernando. And so, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because your fellow students might know of resources that you didn't know about. And so you're sharing information back and forth. So you're kind of getting that support. And that's a lot of what networking is all about. You just kind of have conversations with people and you find out things, you share information, you gain, but you also have something that you give. So you're giving support back and forth. Really important. Thank you for bringing that up. How about
And if
you,
I can,
Anthony? Did you have challenges and that you were able to overcome?
Certainly, I resonate with what everyone has said. A challenge that I encountered was that since my master's program was different in a different area of study than what my undergraduate degree was, I did oftentimes feel behind compared to other students who may have studied business or accounting for their undergraduate degrees. I did have to take some prerequisite courses the summer before actually starting my program. And Chico State actually did make it really easy compared to other universities. In my case, they had six prerequisite courses that you needed to take, but only two of them had to be actual courses. Like they could be like a summer or like a winter course. The other ones, they were more like modules. So I was able to bypass that since I was a Chico State student. So that was really helpful for me to overcome that. But just throughout the entirety of my program, I did kind of feel like I was just struggling to keep pace. But I think that's just grad school in general. As someone mentioned, the workload is different. Um, I eventually found a good pace probably after my first semester on how to manage everything from friends to my social life to family matters as well.
Yeah, it seems like it takes that transition semester where you're kind of figuring things out. You're figuring out a pace, you're figuring out what is the workload going to be. You're just kind of there's a lot coming at you all at once because everything is new. Anthony, I'm wondering what was your undergrad? I'm forgetting.
Yeah,
So
I did sociology and social sciences for undergrad, and then the grad program was business.
okay. And what made you select a different, how did you figure out I want to pivot to business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted to pursue business for my undergraduate degree, and I was actually undeclared for my first 2 years of college. So I was taking general education courses, and when it became time to choose a major, I discovered sociology, and I really did love that, and I have absolutely no regrets during that. But if I did pursue business during my undergraduate degree, it would have taken me longer to finish because of the amount of units that major required. And so, I mean, that's ultimately why I pursued business. I did like that the program at Chico State was pretty interdisciplinary. Like we had like pretty much control over the courses we wanted to take. We did have some like the core courses that we had to take. But also it wasn't as, I would say, as like math intensive as other programs, other MBA programs, in the CSU system. I only had to take like 3 classes that required like numbers. I'm not a
Okay.
numbers person.
And you were able to move on and are in a satisfying career. So I guess that worked for you. Great. Thank you. And go to one more question and just ask each of you if there was something that you could have been told or that you could tell students about how to succeed, what would that be? Does anybody have something off the top of their head that they go, oh yeah, I want to say this?
I think
Fernand,
I, yeah, I think I'd like to start.
yeah.
Aside from everything that everyone has shared, I would say enjoy it. um, have fun with it, be immersed, do the readings, really participate. Because I've learned that although we're worried about, getting these big jobs after you're done, right? If you do become an expert in what you're learning and you do acquire, you do engage in all that knowledge creation that we just spoke about, I think that you will find your place after you graduate. I think that when you are in the program, you really do have to be present. And I think there is a beauty to that. There is a beauty to to engaging in the readings, to reading the books, to participating, to being involved. There's a lot of learning that happens within you as a person, as an individual, beyond academics that happens to you in grad school. And I would say that you really do have to be present and enjoy the process to be able to become that full professional after the fact. Instead of looking just at the job that you might get, just be present where you're at. And I think that's what I would share with someone, because I think that other people, if you have the motivation to go to grad school, you're gonna make it. Because it takes a level of courage to be able to participate in these kinds of programs. But instead of looking at the job, just focus on where you're at. And I think that's what I would like to share.
Thanks, Fernando. That's really good. I love that. And it's beautiful. That just encapsulates it so well. Um, you know, be present. Thank you. How about anyone else have something that they can think of they want to share?
To piggyback on that a little bit, um, yeah, I think what Fernando's saying is super important because you can get so bogged down with like the stuff that you're doing that you don't realize, this is the one of the only times in your life where you can do this type of work. And in a lot of cases, you can get paid for it, like, through the Atlanta program, for example. Here at Davis for the history program, they you don't get in unless you also get funding. And so you have funding for at least 5 years. Um, and that doesn't happen to a lot of people, right? Like when you go to a grad program, a lot of people think it's going to be out of pocket, and it typically is. But depending on the program, depending on the place, if you get funding, you're paid to read, you're paid to do the work, and so there should be joy in that, as like your job, but also what you're going to do in the future. Um, Separately from that, though, I think that we always put a lot of uh, pressure on ourselves to do the best that we can, especially because, we're working through imposter syndrome. And so a lot of times you overcompensate. And so you work harder than everyone else because you think, the imposter syndrome is telling you that you don't belong there. You have to prove that you do. And so what I would say is that, if there's one class, one professor that you're not vibing with, or that it's, giving you a harder time than it needs to be, um, it's just one class. It's not the end of the world. You, you shouldn't, take uh, fails or anything like that in grad school, but you also shouldn't make it such a horrible experience that you're not enjoying it.
Thanks, Juan.
Um, for me, I would say don't be afraid. I think, just like Juan said, I think we're so concerned and so hyper focused on like not failing and doing things right. And I think sometimes we get that way even as just like first generation, like college students. So it can be really easy to like get hyper fixated on that. I think don't be afraid. Don't be afraid if you are looking at programs, whether they're out of state, whether they're, wherever it is, what program, don't be afraid, just do it. That I think fear sometimes will prevent us from reaching our full potential. So just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? As someone who hates to fail, I think if you fail, it's you tried. You just get up and do it again. So just don't be afraid.
I love that, Lucia. As a current grad student and taking a course right now where we were talking about life design, and we were talking about that the that it's an infinite game where really there is no failure, there is just learning more about yourself. And there may be things that don't work out, but you can reframe that rather than looking at it as a failure. Look at it as I learned something and then I can move forward. And I'm going to continue to move forward because this is not a win or lose game. This is an infinite game where I am simply continuing to play and learn more and be more myself and move forward. So I'm really happy that you brought that up too. Anthony.
Hey, thank you, Rose. I would add on, definitely utilize your time in school to connect with other students in your program as well as your faculty and staff. So in my case, I did struggle with like asking for support or help. That's just in my nature. But towards the end of my program, I really did need it, and I did get close to quite a few of my graduate school instructors, which was great. And it's actually useful to me to this day because I work with Chico State instructors, and that made my job a lot easier getting my foot in the door with the College of Business or other colleges at Chico State. I have those established connections because of my grad program, and it helps me in my career right now. So that's always been great. And um, yeah, I would say be willing to make those connections. And it's also really great connecting with other graduate students after you've graduated. A lot of people that were in my program are doing such amazing things that, it's given me some inspiration, and maybe I might want to pursue that in the coming years.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it because um, it is really important to make those connections because you're getting support, but you're also building relationships that um, can be something that you call on later on. And you're just building now so that you have the widest network of support available to you. And I love hearing that this was something that you were able to do in your program and that you are continuing to do that and you could see the benefits of it. I love it. We had a presentation a couple of weeks ago with the Career Center, and one of those folks was letting people know how to use LinkedIn to um, contact people who had graduated from Chico State already in their discipline and be able to, do some networking even if you were far apart. And it sounds like that's the kind of thing that you were just talking about, Anthony. I love it. Well, I so appreciate you all sharing. And what I would like to do is open it up in case anyone has any questions. Jesse or Karen, were there any questions that you were thinking about that you wanted to ask these graduate alumni?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so what Fernando said about being present, that's a huge concern for me. Like I really want to be present, if I'm in a master's program. And so like what does that mean? Like, do you mean like, you know, like how was your schedule? Like, do you have to, what if you're not working? Would that make it would that give you more space to being there, to being more present? Like I'm just trying to, to visualize like you know, is being in a master's program, in order to be present, do you have to not work or is it better? I mean, of course, it's regarding everybody's financial needs, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to clarify that. I think what I mean by being present is by, in essence, being prepared. So when you are engaging in these conversations and you are in these spaces, you're able to contribute and then also to understand the topics and the concepts, right? So I do understand that there is, whether you work full time, everybody's time management looks a little bit different. But in terms of being present, I think is being engaged with the material because um, you read a lot. I mean, I remember reading up to about 200 to 300 pages, sometimes full books in one week. And it can take a little bit of time and strategy to be able to get through all of those readings. And sometimes, if you don't complete the readings, you can really miss out on a lot of understanding and a lot of, conversations and trying to deconstruct some of those concepts. So, by being present, I mean being prepared for some of those conversations and being diligent about how you use your time so you can be prepared. So when those conversations are brought up and those concepts are discussed, you are ready to contribute to that conversation.
And so it sounds like, it may be a little bit easier if you're not needing to work full time and be in school full time. But it also sounds like Fernando, you were able to do that because you did work full time. And
And
so
I'll share that. I'll share. Sorry, so I don't
yeah,
mean to cut. I'll share that with you. Like
yeah.
my first year, for example, I worked full time. After work, I went straight to the library. I only had classes twice a week, but I was there at the library Monday through Friday because I made myself a schedule of 2 to 3 hours to be able to read. So when the next week came up, I was prepared to to be engaged. So, being strategic with your time becomes really essential to be prepared so you can be engaged. I know that again, like Rose mentioned, whether you work full time or part time can make a difference because obviously, if you work part time, it can give you more time with your day. However, at the end of the day, you can have all day and not use your time strategically. So it really does become important to create a schedule and make sure that you find a time that works for you. Because I know that I don't function as good as I do in the mornings as I do compared in the afternoons, right? And so I had to really be thoughtful about how my time could be used more efficiently so I can be prepared for some of those conversations. Um, so that's I guess that's the only thing I would share about that.
Thanks, Fernando. Does that help you understand, Karen?
Oh yes. And so like so grad school seems to be there to be like a lot of conversations that you have to be prepared for. So then reading, let's say 300 pages a week would really prepare for that conversation in order to be present, right? Something like that.
Yes, because most of those classes are seminar based. So they're seminars. So you are like most of my classes in the MPA program was a circle of us with the instructor on one end and the instructor prompting us with some of the concepts and then everybody engaging in the conversation.
Yeah. Sounds fun. Thank you.
And one, it sounds like you have something to add here.
Yeah, if I could add to that, being present also I think means being open to those conversations. There's so many times where I think I understand the material, exactly like the author wanted us to understand it. And then one of my um, colleagues, one of my classmates, the professor can say something, and all of a sudden, it hits a switch in your head where it's like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, but that makes perfect sense, or it changes the way that I think of things. And there are disagreements, but I don't, in my mind, I think things flow more parallelly than they do perpendicularly. So if there is a disagreement, just being open to the possibility that you might not have it exactly right and being able to change, what you think the reading meant or how it connects to other things. And so being present also does mean listening to your classmates and your professors.
Oh, that's great. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Juan.
And I just wanted to add, your reading and your discussions are going to look different depending on your major. Um, because it sounds like Fernando and Juan had really cool conversations. Mine were basic nutrition, like don't eat this because this happens. Um, so just keep that in mind that each major is going to require something different. So my readings consisted of research articles, that could be like 20, 30, 40 pages. But they're not easy research articles to interpret, so you have to break them down. And then you had to present the findings in a way that was digestible to everybody who isn't in that class. So it looks a little bit different for each major. And like I said, some conversations are a little bit more interesting and a little bit more fun, and some conversations, don't eat that, you'll die. Don't eat this, you'll die. So, you know, so just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Lucia. What
Thank you.
were yours like, Anthony? Your
Yeah,
class?
I'm really glad you mentioned that, Lucia, because mine definitely was not as reading intensive as theirs either. Mine was very project based. We did do readings, but I didn't expect anything was longer than 20, 30 pages for like a given week for us. We had like more like long-term, like semester long projects for each individual course. And also what was unique to my program, I'm not sure if it's still like this. We actually did not have really like a thesis or like a comprehensive exam. We had like a capstone course that did count. Like it waived that requirement, if you will. It was definitely difficult. It was like a semester long project where we worked with like a corporate sponsor and we're doing deliverables for the client. But it's basically because it was like a business administration program. Not all MBA programs are like this. Other ones in the area, like in Sacramento, Central California, and in the Bay, those do have like a thesis requirement as well. But Chico's at the time did not. So I'm not sure if that's changed.
That is still the case, and I'm
Okay.
really glad you brought that up because it does depend on each program. Each individual program will have a slightly different culminating activity. So maybe it used to be that you just thought, oh, okay, everybody's going to take a thesis, is going to write a thesis where they do their own individual research that's original research, and then they're going to write it up. That still happens, and that's often one of the options for a culminating activity in the programs. But there may be other things like a capstone course, like Anthony just mentioned, or sometimes there's a comprehensive exam where you may be writing on certain topics and you write and write and write, but it's not, um, it's sort of putting together all kinds of research that's out there, and you're synthesizing a lot of research for a comprehensive exam, or it may be writing a professional paper that isn't exactly the same as doing some original research and survey and writing up an analysis, but it may be more project based. So there are very different options as far as your culminating activity. So thanks for bringing that up. Any other questions?
It sounds like grad school is a little bit more intense. Did you guys feel well prepared when you got there, or was there something that you did that sort of allowed you to ramp up the intensity to, to, be prepared for that speed?
For me, I felt like I was more prepared for my master's than I was for doing this PhD program. And I think that was just because it was an easier transition. I went from, being undergrad at Chico State to being a grad student at Chico State. And so my professors were pretty much the same. My advisor was the same. Semester schedule also the same. Here at Davis, we're on the quarter schedule. And so it's 10 weeks instead of 16. And so it just goes by so much faster. But you still have basically the same amount of work. Like, for example, per class, we can expect to be reading 1 to 2 books per week. And so that's per class. Sometimes you're taking 3 classes. So yeah, it's a lot of work. But um, I think just doing it and seeing like how long it takes to complete a specific task. And the more you do it, the more efficient you become too. And so in grad school, I highly doubt that everyone's reading every word from, every book that's assigned. There are definitely strategies for how to like gut a book, to understand like its main arguments chapter by chapter if you need to. Um, so yeah, I think you sort of develop your own strategies and talking to your peers too. They have strategies, and just incorporating as many like time saving, um, efficient strategies as you can really does help. Because when I started, I was reading every book, word for word, and just spending literally way too much time on everything, and I was miserable. Um, and I started learning how to get better at first off reading faster, but also just not being too worried about like digesting every single word, because you really just need the big arguments, some examples that the authors provide, and be able to sort of put those concepts together. And then in discussion in the seminar, that's when things really start making more sense because everyone has a different take on what it is that you read. And they can provide different examples too. So, like if you took notes on one example, someone else could have notes on something else. And you sort of start building up your knowledge about this book or the readings, whatever they are. And if that's going to look differently, based on what major you're in. But when it's like reading and writing majors, like the humanities, um, yeah, just getting better at being efficient with your time, I think is what helped me at least. And I wouldn't say that I'm there yet. I still spend way too much time on readings, but maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Thanks, Juan. Anybody else have some insights on whether you were felt prepared when you moved into grad programs?
I wouldn't say was I prepared. Um, yes and no. Again, I was familiar because my undergrad is in nutrition, so I kind of knew what each class consisted of and what the expectations were for that. But the work is like sometimes double, triple the work. But what I did learn was kind of creating a group of your peers. Just it doesn't have to be a huge group. It may be like three, four, even five people max, I would say, where you can then delegate. Like, okay, if we're doing a test, especially at least for my program, our tests were very in depth, very intense. I think for one of my classes, we ended up with like a 20, maybe 30-page study guide. So what you do is you kind of divide and conquer. And so you have one person be in charge of one topic. You're in charge of one topic. And so you become the master of presenting that topic. So then you present it to your other peers in that group. And so that's another great way to learn the material and you feel comfortable with your peers. So if you say something out of pocket, everyone's like, no, this is, that's not how it is. This is how it is. And so it's a great way to kind of get comfortable with the material. You learn the material. And so when you're taking the test, or presenting, it's easier. It does get easier. I don't like presenting, public speaking. So definitely having that support makes a huge difference.
Thanks, Lucia. Anthony or Fernando, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I personally did not feel prepared for my when I initially started, but throughout the program, I did get more comfortable just with the workload and the dynamics of grad school. But I really had great mentors of Rose and Joanna. to guide us through all of this. Our weekly meetings was a reset for me. I always, whenever I was stressed out and then these meetings happened, they really helped me stay grounded, and connecting with the other students in Adelante at the time, did help me out. So going back to building community, having those relationships with other graduate students who know what the struggle's like, who know, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
helped me out.
I love hearing that. And what's cool is that even though Adelante is sunsetting, we actually have a Graduate Pathways Society that is the club that is kind of moving on and will keep going. And that is something that's open to every student on campus. And so they can do what exactly you're talking about. It's a place that they can come and get that support and talk about where things are at and how they're feeling and get somebody that's going to buoy them up. So I'm so glad you said that. That's lovely. How about you, Fernando?
I feel like there's only so much you can do to prepare. I feel like once you start, you just have to find the right people to create those study groups with. And I think I found a really good friend, Carlos, and I think I spent with him most of my 1 year and the like all the entire first year of the grad program. It was just me and him at the library. And it's really good to find someone you can share ideas with and just kind of bounce off some of the readings with. So no, I don't think I can say that I was truly prepared for all of that, but I think that in the first semester I quickly found out what I needed to be able to succeed, and that was to find community, find the right people to have those conversations with, and just make time to do all those readings.
Oh, that's so great. And yeah, so really, it's not necessarily a matter of feeling like you got this nailed as you begin. It's feeling like I'm ready because this is what I think is right, and it's gonna be a transition time, and I am gonna figure it out. And there is support out there to help me get through it. I really so appreciate what you all have shared. Are there any more questions before we wrap up today?
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Well, I was considering an a master's degree that has an online format. And so I was wondering like what do you think about that? Like, does that sound like more difficult, or I don't know, like what does it sound like to you?
Did
Can
any
I,
of you do an online? Go ahead, Fernando.
yeah, can I ask a follow-up to that, Karen? How do you believe you're a better learner? Like, I think it really depends on your learning style. Like I know that my learning style is to be in person and to be present and to see people and be engaged. I know other people who did most of the program on a hybrid system and most of their classes were online. So I think you might have to ask yourself, what is your learning style and how do you feel more comfortable when you are engaged in those spaces?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I actually I'm finishing up the religious studies online um program. So that's why I was considering the online format because yeah, I do consider my learning style, and I found that the online really works for me and I'm really excited about it, but I just was wondering what other people, how they see it. So yeah, but thank you, yeah, for your response.
Yeah, I think what Fernando's saying is spot on. It really depends on the person. Um, but I mean, not that long ago we were all online because of COVID. So it's definitely doable. You do miss some things though, like that the person to person sort of connection. And there is something special about like seeing the people that you're working with, like, around a table discussing. But it's a similar thing. Like you're not missing a whole lot. I mean, it is a difference, but you're not missing a whole lot via Zoom. I've had two classes here at Davis over Zoom because the professors were, you know, doing something else away from California. So meeting over Zoom was the only way, and those classes were still very rewarding. You still have to very much, do the readings and be prepared. Um, And sometimes, at least one time, we had less students in the class, and so it was more on you to, be able to keep the discussion going instead of, relying on other people. So, um, yeah, I think if as long as you are preparing yourself by doing the readings and staying up to date with all of your assignments, I think it's definitely doable.
Thank you.
I want to just jump in and say a couple things about online programs. One is you should, when you're doing your research and identifying these online programs, you should always look at the funding. Sometimes the funding is different and the cost is different for online programs versus in person or hybrid programs. So just make sure you note that so that you are aware of the funding opportunities and how that's linked to the program that you're applying to. And then the second thing is that there are great opportunities. I just learned, for example, in visiting the library here and the archives, that there are students who are doing online programs, for example, at Rutgers, right? And then using the archives here in Chico because they're based here in Chico. And so you might find the same thing. So you can still get like an in-person element, right? While doing an online program if you're doing your research with facilities or different places at a university close by to where you are that will work with that online program. So there's always opportunities to do that kind of thing.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
mentioning that, Joanna. Yeah, and I was thinking of one other thing, and that is everybody seemed to say, connecting with your peers is really important. And that is still something that can be done if you're doing an online program, but you have to set up hey, let's meet via Zoom at this time outside of class, and let's have that discussion group or, study group. It can be done. So, you know, just I just think that almost everybody said how important it was to have that group of peers that were, um, their support system getting through these programs. And then let's see here. Um, there's a question. Did any of you have to commute to your grad program 20, 30 minutes or more?
I actually did my first semester was fully online. And I don't know if this was mentioned because my screen kind of froze. If you're doing whether it's a hybrid program, online program, or if you want to do it in person, look at the program itself. Because some classes, even if they're offered online, that material might be more digestible in person, which is what happened with one of my classes. So something to keep in mind. But I did. So my first semester that I decided to do in-person classes, I was actually living in Gridley, which is about, 30, 40 minutes away from Chico. And so I was traveling back and forth every day so that I could go to class. And then I would leave in the afternoon. And then I got into a car accident, and so I didn't have a car available for 2 months. And so I ended up taking the bus, which then at first I was like, what am I going to do? And I kind of use that bus time as my me time because once I got home, it was back to homework, back to reading, back to quizzes, and so I really kind of enjoyed it. But yeah, at my first semester of in-person classes, I did travel at least I think it was three times a week.
Thanks, Lucia. Does that help, Jesse?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone so much for being here, and you are incredible resources. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. And I am looking forward to doing more of these next semester. So I hope that we will be able to see some of you then. But we appreciate your time and your valuable experience. Thank you.
So good to see you all.
Thank you. Bye.
See
Bye.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.